and global dialogue are co-created by grassroots advocates, multilateral governments, the private sector, philanthropies, and youth, including those from and representing communities facing systemic discrimination. It is one of the largest multi-sectoral convenings to advance gender equality. From climate change to gender-based violence-based solutions. We will enhance our collective power by championing the leadership of grassroots advocates, connecting advocates' challenges, and identify opportunities to advance gender equality and improve the well-being of girls and women in all their. And from Women Deliver, we have Maliha Khan, President and CEO, and Kathleen Sherwin, outgoing interim CEO and incoming board member. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much, moderator, and thanks to everyone present here. Before I respond to this question, I want us to look back in the last 28 years after the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994, under the leadership of His Excellency Paul Kagame, the President of the Republic of Rwanda. The country has progressively and intentionally created an equal and inclusive society. We have made progress, and we do still have a long way to go, but we recognize that a lot has been done in closing the gender gap. And this is clear when we look into the report, like the last World Economic Forum, the Global Gender Gap Report of the World Economic Forum, released in 2021. It has places Rwanda at 7th globally and 2nd in Africa in narrowing the gender gap. And this is done by looking into key specific sectors like education, economy, health, and women participation in governance. So this makes Rwanda one of the best places in the world to be a woman, I think. So coming back to your question on why Rwanda agreed to host this, it is true that the government of Rwanda, under the leadership through the Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion, that is there to coordinate strategically all the activities to empower women and young girls, has been designated to host, to be the co-chair of the conference host committee. And we look forward to establishing not just a city, a country, but a regional approach to supporting this Women Deliver conference to be happening here in Rwanda next year. The country wishes to ensure that its hallmarks, including peace and reconciliation, women empowerment, promotion of investment and entrepreneurship, especially for women and young girls, women's access to information and technology, are exemplified through this Women Deliver Forum. So we do recognize that Women Deliver is a platform that will bring together the diverse community from all over the world to discuss different issues that still affect women and young girls, and come up with tangible recommendation, resolution for an inclusive and equal global community. So Rwanda will benefit from knowledge sharing, building further collaboration to promote gender equality and women empowerment. So we really couldn't say no to such an honor and privilege to host this important event happening for the first time on African continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Action Coalition, and this will be centered in our next conference. As the Minister already spoke, World Economic Forum ranks Rwanda 7th globally and 2nd in Africa. And it was really important post-COVID to see near universal health care here in Rwanda. UHC is the bedrock of gender equality. And then lastly, there are so many laws, policies, and frameworks here that are being implemented, whether that's Vision 2050 or the National Strategy for Transformation. So it's a real privilege to have our conference here for the first time in Africa, and specifically here in Kigali.
Thank you, Kathleen. The Women Deliver Conference is impacting all participants. So I pose this question to you, Maliha.
Women Deliver Conference is a conference that's co-created by an intersection of people. We bring together advocates that represent marginalized and vulnerable communities, along with government, with private sector, as well as parliamentarians and others. And in co-creating this space, what we try to do is really center the intersectional principles around championing gender equality that's already been also spoken about. So in this, we also try to look at some of the compounding issues that are facing girls and women around the world. And we see so many of them nowadays, particularly around climate change, around some of the conflicts and refugee populations that are happening, but also around gender-based violence, access to sexual reproductive health and rights, universal health care, and so on. The way that the conference tries to create impact is to bring together these different intersectional people, create a space for them to exchange ideas, share policy, advocacy initiatives, and also come up with solutions to some of the problems that are being faced, and come up with these joint strategies that they can work on together. It also provides a space to bring together, like I said before, the advocates, but also government, private sector, and parliamentarians and politicians to exchange these ideas and come up with common solutions, because until we have all these people together working towards gender equality, we won't be able to achieve it. So in 2019, the conference we held in Vancouver, Canada, we delighted to know had over 8,000 people attending in person, and over 100,000 people online. And these included heads of government, heads of states, and the leaders of large agencies like the UN, as well as these advocates that I've spoken about. And together, they created a number of commitments and a number of ideas and solutions, which we hope to replicate when we're here in Kigali and to continue that journey.
Thank you, Maliha. Honorable Minister, you mentioned earlier.
Thank you very much. The conference's influence comes from its long history to connect the threads from various policy windows. Talking about policy windows, the government of Rwanda has adopted various international regional treaties, convention agreements, including not limited to the Beijing Platform for Action of 1995, the Sustainable Development Goals of the Agenda 2030, the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, UN Resolution 1325, Women, Peace and Security, and many other key instruments. And all those instruments have been domesticated and serve the guide in the elaboration of our country's vision from Vision 2020 to Vision 2050, but also other national development tools such as a National Strategy for Transformation known as NST1. So Rwanda will use Women Deliver to platform to strengthen commitment formulated from the above mentioned documents, but also other platforms like the Generation Equality Forum for Gender Equality, and as an action coalition leader and commitment maker related to technology and innovation to advance gender equality. But vice versa, the commitment from Women Deliver will also be advocated for and implemented through these other platforms. So being a host of Women Deliver 2023, it will give us, as Rwanda, an opportunity to create a national host committee. This committee will provide a convening platform from different stakeholders, from different sectors, that will help to enhance gender equality and health rights, health well-being of all girls and women in the lead up, during, and even after the conference. So this National Host Committee will be important. We will, of course, also support on protocols and government relations to invite other world leaders, as the CEO mentioned, member state ministers, and parliamentarians, and many more to participate in the Women Deliver Conference. And finally, we do hope that this conference will consist of a flashlight to guide policymakers on how we can all work together, locally, regionally, globally, to align and build a momentum and deliver results and impact for girls and women everywhere in the world.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Within gender equality
Group that's helping us to put together the themes and the subjects of the conference that we'll be looking at. We are still working on that. We're not quite ready to announce the themes of the conference yet. We will be doing that alongside with the Minister and other luminaries on July 19th when we announce the launch of the conference. But I can say that the advisory group has been sort of directing us to certain areas. And these are the compounding issues that affect the intersectional identities of girls and women across the world. And we're seeing many of these starting to face us today. So of course, like already mentioned, gender-based violence, which has been on an increase during the pandemic and continues to be a major issue facing girls and women, will be a central focus of the conference, as will be climate change, because we know climate change affects everybody, but also has a disproportionate effect on girls and women and really sets them back a lot in achieving their true potential. Unpaid care, which again is an issue that sort of emerged during the pandemic when so many girls and women had to drop so many other things that they were doing in order to take care of their households and communities, and faced an unbalanced burden of that care on them. So we'll continue to focus on these major issues, which are also, I know, a priority for the government of Rwanda and the minister, but bring together a global audience that will try to address them, and coming together, come up with solutions, come up with inspiration, come up with joint energy. We all know we need to renew our energies going forward to face all these issues and with a renewed vigor. So those are some of the thematics that we'll be addressing during the conference.
Thank you, Malika. Over to you,
Generation Equality Forum. So we're really pleased to announce that in partnership with UN Women, the Generation Equality Forum will convene at our conference, which is the midpoint of a 5-year set of commitments. Over $40 billion of commitments have been made to gender equality through the forum. And so we'll have an accountability moment at our conference where Action Coalition leaders and commitment makers from around the world, including many governments, will be invited to talk about the progress that they've made. But we'll also be following up on commitments from the Nairobi Summit, the GPE, the GPE replenishment, those that have happened at UNGA, the UN General Assembly, and the Commission of Status of Women. So a big piece of the conference will be on accountability. How do we ensure that commitment makers and governments follow through on their commitments to girls and women?
Great, thank you.
Well, so since 2019, and some of us here had an opportunity to work on 2019, there are 5 big differences or unique changes that we're making to the conference in partnership with the government. So the first is it will be a hybrid conference. So we will have 6,000 people on site and over 200,000 online. So that makes it the largest conference in the world on gender equality to be held next year. The second is around that tie into the Generation Equality Forum. We'll be able to host the Generation Equality Forum and its member states here at our conference. The third is we now have what we call regional convening partners. So not just in Kigali, but there'll be 6 other countries hosting their own convenings for 6 months leading up to the conference. And then they will be sending delegations to Kigali for the conference here. So it's really going to be a global conference in addition to the focus here. Another new component is the Global Dialogue. That's going to be a virtual platform that's going to be open for 6 months in advance of the conference. And that's open to everyone, our partners, advocates, young people. And that will be a platform to be able to promote new evidence and research, networking events, and activities from our regional convening partners. And then lastly, we've committed over $3 million to increase the accessibility inclusion of the conference. That's in terms of interpretation and translation, mental health services, trauma-informed specialists for those girls and women who are telling their story, and ensuring that our online platforms are accessible. So this commitment is to ensure that everyone feels like Women Deliver Conference is their home.
Okay, thank you so much. My last question is for Minister Bayisenge.
I'll articulate around the national gender policy that was recently revised in 2021 following the the previous version you had of 2010. With this new, the revised national gender policy, the vision of Rwanda is for Rwanda to become a nation that enjoys equality and equity toward national and sustainable transformation. So we want as a country to ensure that gender gaps across sectors are addressed through acceleration of effectiveness of gender mainstreaming, gender responsive interventions, and gender accountability to position Rwanda as a global model in promoting gender equality. So the areas where we still see gaps are not very much different from what the CEO mentioned earlier, as when we look at the issues women and girls are facing across the globe, we see similarities. There are not really so much difference. Reason why a forum like Women Deliver will be an important moment to discuss those common challenges for the women. Coming back to this gender policy, revised national gender policy that give a direction of the country toward gender equality and women empowerment. There are areas where we still see gaps and where we want to concentrate as a country. The first one is the national planning and the budgeting, making sure that all the national planning frameworks, sector policies and strategies, as well as programs and initiatives, both in the public and the private sector, are gender sensitive. Because in the past, the focus has been really in the public sector, but we see that the majority of the women and girls, we see them in the private sector, meaning that it's high time to bring on board the private sector. The second area where Rwanda is concentrating is accelerating women economic empowerment. We have to improve the gender equality and equity in all sectors while increasing women access to productive economic resources and opportunities, and ensuring that men and women are free from any form of gender-based violence and discrimination, and this is very important. And this will go hand in hand with the implementation of key strategic interventions aiming at bridging the gender-digital divide. With COVID, we've seen that we need really to bridge this gender digital divide. The reason why even Rwanda joined the Generation Equality Action Coalition of Gender in Technology and Innovation. So this will be done not just giving access and usage to digital devices to women, but going beyond in trying to address the stereotypes limiting access and career choices for women and girls in this domain. Again, for Rwanda, we see that we have really made progress, but we still face challenges when it comes to implementing the good laws and policies we have. So that's the reason why we have to leverage on positive cultural norms that support best practices for gender promotion, but also implement mechanisms that address persistent cultural norms and stereotypes that still hinders effective implementation of gender equality and equity. The role of men and boys is key, is a paramount, because we've seen that we have to invest more in gender transformative approaches that change these mindset and stereotypes. And last but not the least is that increase the women meaningful participation in decision making. Of course, as Rwanda, we are leading in the parliament with 61%, in the cabinet with 55%. But it's not the same in the private sector or at the local government. So we have to make sure that women are there where decisions are being taken, to make sure that the decision taken considers the concerns and the needs of women and young girls. Definitely, we will also continue to review, to adapt our laws and policies and legal framework to make sure that they accommodate the dynamics of development. Thank you.
Thank you. For some questions from the press, keeping in mind that your question should be about the WD 2023 conference and the partnership with the government of Rwanda.
Thanks. I said one of the priorities in our revised national gender policy is the engagement, active engagement of the private sector, since we've seen that it's the sector that employs the majority of women and girls. And it's not only in Rwanda, it's worldwide. So what we are doing in Rwanda to make sure that we involve the private sector, first of all, is to engage it through the establishment of the legal framework and the strategies and policies. So far, our private sector has already a gender mainstreaming strategy. That's the first step, to make sure that they have a clear guidance, they have clear steps and clear actions to make sure that they mainstream gender in the private sector. Also, we work hand in hand with the private sector, Women Chamber, who are very active in our clusters and sub-clusters at the ministry. Also, the private sector has been very much engaged through the Gender Equality Seed Program. It's a program that we are implementing together with National Gender Monitoring Office and UNDP, where key companies are enrolled into the program with a checklist on what they have, key actions they have to put in place to make sure that they create conducive environment for the women working in the sector. So far, when we were celebrating the Women's Month in March this year, companies were awarded for having really shown concrete, put in place concrete action to ensure that there is a participation of women in the private sector. Some of them has put in place programs, early childhood ECD programs at the companies. They have introduced ECD centers, breastfeeding rooms. Others have created many other initiatives to make sure that women feel comfortable. These companies include the banks, financial institutions. They include the hotels. When some of these hotels are part of the process, they include the tea companies. They include. There are so many companies, and the process is ongoing. So this has been one way of involving the private companies. And when those companies were awarded during March, other companies also wanted to join the process, because they have shown that it's not just it's not doing favor to women. It increases also the productivity. This case has been shown especially in tea companies, where the study, an assessment that was done together with UNICEF, shows that by introduction of ECD services at working place, women feels safe, feels comfortable because their children are in good hands, and then the productivity has really increased. So it's a business case. It increases the productivity. It's not just for the favor of women or just respecting or protecting the rights of the children. So these are a few ways in which we are involving the private sector on board. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Janelle.
The other question, what can we learn from Rwanda? Other African countries, but actually, the rest of the world, really, including the world, Western countries and European countries, can learn from some of the steps that's been taken here in Rwanda. And as the minister mentioned, just in the last 3 decades, you've seen a tremendous amount of progress made. And I think that's for a number of reasons. You have, high-level political support for the process. You have a tremendous amount of political engagement of women at all levels, including, of course, in Parliament, but at other levels also. You have the inclusion of the private sector and pushing for women's empowerment, economic empowerment, and participation in the in the private sector at all levels. So not just at lower level in terms of employing women, but also at higher levels. You see a remarkable number of women leading initiatives here in Rwanda too. And the commitment of the government to a number of policy windows, for instance, the Generation Equality Forum and the commitments that are made there. But one of the other things that I think is really important and remarkable about Rwanda is that there's been a policy of engaging men and boys and addressing masculinity and the transformation of society in that. And I think that's also one of the reasons why, with all of these things combined, you're seeing tremendous progress, and that can be learned, that can be a lesson for many other countries for it.